All right, well, it is 2:05. For the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure that we will have some more folks rolling in here as we get going. Good afternoon from all of us. So my name is Miller Fouch, and I am a consultant for TBSP East Project. I'm based out of the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. And I'm going to be presenting today with Shelby and Melissa, and I'll let them introduce themselves in just a second. And then we also have our friend Jessica Eschbaugh is here with us, and she is running the chat rooms. So she will be making sure to organize you all as you get signed in and as we get things going. So we're really excited about this. Like I just said, it's our first ever statewide PD. We really hope that you all can kind of pick each other's brains as we present on this material, and hopefully, learn some things and network a little bit and meet some new faces and friends. So we did a little memoji, I think. It's not a Bitmoji anymore. So I kind of look like that person maybe on certain days. I begrudgingly enjoy bike riding with my family. They enjoy it way more than I do. I do love young adult novels turned into Netflix movies. Big shout out to The Kissing Booth 2, which just came out, because I can't handle dramatic things right now in life. And I'm learning to trail run without falling down, and I've not been successful as of yet. I do believe that I am a shuffle runner. So happy to see your faces today. And then I'm going to let Shelby introduce herself for those of you that may not know her.
Sure, thanks, Miller. Hey, everybody, my name is Shelby Cook. I am a licensed master social worker and a licensed school social worker. And I've enjoyed working with children and families in both the community mental health setting and in the school setting as a school social worker. And I've been with the TBSP project for about 4 years, and a big chunk of my work focuses on family and community engagement. So I'm really excited to be talking with you guys about that today. As far as me personally, I love to travel, and obviously that has been a bit of a challenge in 2020. But my husband and I just booked our first trip for a while, and we are traveling to the Smokies to celebrate our 7th wedding anniversary. So all of you East Tennessee folks will have to let me know all the places we should hit up along the way. But when not traveling, when I'm at home, I love to snuggle with my 2 dogs, who you hopefully will not hear barking in today's session. I'll try to keep that under wraps. I'm also an avid foodie. I love to eat food, talk about food, make food. For those of you that said you've been spending your time baking and cooking, I am right there with you. Also love to practice yoga, and have been trying to get better at that in 2020, and have been spending time working on my garden, which has been really refreshing for my soul, but also really hard and exhausting as well. And so if you're a gardener, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that is a little bit about me, and I'll let Melissa introduce herself.
Hey everyone, thanks for being with us. My name is Melissa Hine, and I work with the Middle Tennessee region of the Tennessee Behavior Supports Project. And I'm a former school counselor, so I worked in middle school and high schools for 5 years in Georgia and Iowa. So I'm always having the lens of my school counselors out there. Anytime we're developing resources and trainings and working with school teams and districts, I always try to be that voice of the school counselors. And this is my 6th back to school with the Tennessee Behavior, my 6th year with the back to school at the Tennessee Behavior Supports Project. So a year unlike any other, but I'm ready to see how it happens and get this ball rolling. And I'm just so encouraged that everyone is taking so much extra time to, prepare, create plans, build on that sense of community as we enter in an unknown time, but using all of our skills and resources that you have as a school to kind of lead with the best foot forward that we can. My personal fun, I should be winking with my emoji. So you know it's me. My personal fun facts are that I love playing baseball with my boys. I have an almost 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So you can imagine we try to go outside as much as possible, especially since March. I enjoy the escape of reality television. Like Miller, I can't handle too many serious things. I'm in the line of like Bachelor, Labor of Love. I newly rediscovered how much I like watching the Duggars. So you can judge me, or you can privately chat me if you want to talk about any of those things, because that's my escape from reality. And then using our ice cream maker to escape the heat and give myself some much deserved treats. So I'll make a good one this afternoon. And yeah, happy to be with you today.
Okay, so here is our schedule for today's session. We will be doing our welcome, obviously, which we've already about completed, and we'll be having an overview of family and community engagement. Then we'll talk about 3 specific areas that we think are most important for you to focus on during COVID-19. All the scenarios that we're working through for this fall, and that is positive relationships, two-way communication, and having a culture of collaboration. And we will have 2 breakout rooms where you will be assigned to small groups to talk about different questions that we've prepared related to the material that we're going to be covering today. And then we'll have wrap up and we will share our resources. So hopefully everybody received an email this morning with this link that you see here at the top of the page. But that is a link to a website that we've created that has all of the materials from today's session. Everything that we reference you can find there, as well as the slides and this action planning form that we hope you will download and use today to kind of take notes and remember what you want to share back with your team after you leave today. And hopefully everybody's found the chat box. We've seen lots of great engagement there already, but if not, you should be able to find that in your menu at the bottom of your screen or the top of your screen, depending on how you're configured. And we will also have those breakout sessions that I mentioned.
All right, so you've probably seen us post about these online training expectations. Anytime we have a training, we like to talk through what, just like with our students, what the expectations are to be responsible, respectful, engaged, and prepared. I know that you guys are already participating, already renaming yourself, already showing us that you're engaged and ready to go. We know that a lot of you are probably multitasking right now, so take care of whatever needs you have. But if you can, leave your video on because it helps us to feel like we're having that two-way interaction with you. But if you need to step out and turn off your video, please do that. That's fine. And then we're so excited for these breakout sessions to be able to be opportunities to interact and discuss things. So that'll be exciting for you as well. And just be sure that you're, even though your video is showing, that you're still muted. So those are our training expectations for today. And then keep in mind that any chats will be part of the final transcript. So the Tennessee Behavior Supports Project, you all know at least one of us, depending on your region, but we provide training and support to districts and schools on response to instruction and intervention for behavior. So Tennessee's Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports Program. And like Miller said, we're so excited that transitioning to this virtual world has allowed us to collaborate, provide a cross-state training opportunity, because since travel is not part of this, it's just been so wonderful to take advantage of learning opportunities together and spreading our reach and getting to connect educators from across the entire state instead of just being limited to the regions we work with. So again, depending on which region you are is the Tennessee Behavior Supports contact that you work with, but we provide the same training across the state, the same resources. We meet together quarterly and then virtually even more often to make sure that we're all meeting the needs of our schools and districts in the same ways. So it's been such a strong thing to be a part of and to all really come together to develop opportunities like this. So Tennessee's multi-tiered system of supports model is something that is on the right-hand part of your screen, and it is the framework that kind of organizes the interventions and supports that you provide to your students and staff. So RTI²B is an example of a multi-tiered systems of support. So we wanted to point you to this graphic if you haven't seen it, but it just shows how, as a school, you should be thinking about how you align all the different ways you support students with their academic needs as well as their non-academic needs. And so that's what we primarily focus on. Today's training will focus on Tier 1 supports that you provide to all students and staff in your building, but do know that there are additional resources, especially regarding engaging family and community when it comes to serving students with additional needs. But we're having that kind of Tier 1 school-wide lens throughout our training today.
So before we get into our family and community engagement overview, I do want to point out that we're using the word family here and not the word parent. And that is intentional. And that's important because we want to include any non-traditional families where the most invested adult in a student's life might not necessarily be their parent. So we define family and community engagement as focused on supporting and empowering families and communities to engage as an equal partner with a shared responsibility. So that shared responsibility means that we don't have any blame setting, whether that's staff to family or vice versa. And it also means that families get to help make decisions about school systems, which moves right on into our next point of centered on collaborative problem solving. So that means we work together with families when we have issues in our schools and help make decisions about how to solve those problems that we're having. Family and community engagement also requires a growth mindset that is strengths focused. So many of you have probably learned about growth mindset, having a strengths focused approach with your students. So we want to expand that same thinking into our relationships with families and with the communities, and focusing on their strengths and how we can use those strengths to leverage them to better the school environment. The next point, we use culturally responsive strategies to facilitate access and opportunities to engage. So we want to use strategies that are responsive to the culture that our families are coming from, and being mindful of that when we're planning our different opportunities and our different events, and thinking about what ways we can make adaptations to really make those more accessible for families. Next, family and community engagement continues from birth to young adulthood. And this, as a social worker, is one of the more exciting points to me, because, you know, you guys, we're all in our students' lives only for a short amount of time. Although a year might seem like a really long time, it really does fly by, and it's only a short window of time. But with true family and community engagement, we're empowering families. And so that knowledge that they gain from us during their time working with us continues with them throughout the rest of the life of the student and of the family. And then finally, it reinforces learning across multiple settings. So today, of course, we're focusing on behavior learning and behavior skills. And so engaging families in that work can ensure that that learning is reinforced in different settings. And we'll talk even more about that in just a second. But I do want to talk a little bit about the difference between family involvement and family engagement. You've probably heard both of these terms maybe used interchangeably, but they're a little bit different, and I want to talk about those differences today because they are important. So in 2013, some of you might be aware, the U.S. Department of Ed released a framework for family school partnerships that a lot of this material is referencing to. And you see the citation there on the bottom, but that framework talks a lot about how schools were using more of a family involvement model and the need to transition into more of an engagement model. And that's not to say that involvement is bad or terrible, or those initiatives should be thrown out the window, but it's just to say that family engagement can be a step better in a better direction, and can be more effective, and you get more bang for your buck for those kind of interventions. So with family involvement, we're just focusing on participation, right? So we're just kind of allowing families in the door. But with family engagement, we're really buying families in, and we're partnering with them and focused on that. With family involvement, we just have one-way communication from the school to the families. But with family engagement, we have two-way communication, which Miller will talk about today because that's one of our most critical points that we're going to focus on. With family involvement, the responsibility lies primarily on the family to get involved, right? So we have schools that tell families, you know, here's your menu of ways you can be engaged this year, and you kind of choose from that, and it's your responsibility as a family member to get involved. But with family engagement, we really share that responsibility, and as educators, we take responsibility for getting families engaged as well. With family involvement, we view the family as just a bystander in the child's life, but with family engagement, we really understand that they are a partner and that their role is really critical. This last point is probably the one that I'd like to emphasize the most, that family involvement is random and disconnected. And that can be one of the things that keeps these involvement initiatives from being successful. But with engagement, we want to be strategic. We want to integrate engagement into everything that we're doing, whether that's academics, behavior, database decision-making. We're introducing that family engagement mindset into all of those different areas. So why is it important to engage families and communities in schools? So you see all of these reasons popping up, all of these things that have been found in research to to happen when we have strong family and community engagement. And I don't want to point out every single one of them, but I do just want to focus in on a few that are especially important today as we're talking about behavior, our behavior framework, and that's that they decrease detentions and in-school suspensions. It mediates the relationship between between SES and between student self-regulation and academic skills. And so that's a huge point for our equity piece. And so that poverty doesn't have to necessarily mean low achievement. That family engagement can help mediate those negative effects of low SES that we've seen in the past. So lots of benefits here to engaging families in a school environment. So when we're talking about family and community engagement within RTS2B specifically, we have this model for family and community engagement within that framework. And so you've all probably seen our beloved upside down triangle. And so we have our guiding principles here are strategic, integrated, and sustained. And then we have our core features of collaborative, relational, developmental, data-based, and built in a multi-tiered system of supports, just like everything else that we do. So today we're going to be focusing more on the relational and the collaborative piece. So working together with families and really focusing on building those positive relationships so that we can get into the developmental piece. So why should we engage families and communities in RTS2B? So first of all, we all know repetition is the mother of all learning. The more times I hear something, the more likely I am to remember it. So that's one big pro for engaging families is when students go home, they're hearing those same behavior expectations all the more than when they're just at school. Next, for sustainability, we want to teach our students social skills that are going to be sustained throughout their lifetime. And so if we engage their families in that learning, in that same framework, then those skills are more likely to be sustainable whenever our students move on to the next stage of their lives. And finally, for generalization, I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but our students are learning, what it means to be respectful in different areas of the school building, and now, through virtual learning as well for many of our students. But if we engage families in that RTS2B in our expectations at our school, then they're also going to be learning what being respectful means at home, in the community, maybe at the grocery store, at the library, all these different places that their community interact with within their community, with their family. So like I said, we have 3 focus points that we're gonna really hone in on today for family and community engagement, specifically during the COVID-19 environment that we found ourselves in. And I am gonna talk specifically for a few minutes about that relationship piece. So establishing strong positive relationships as soon as possible. And Miller will talk about communication, and Melissa will bring it all together with collaboration. So positive relationships are the foundation for stakeholder engagement. So I don't want to be dramatic, but without that strong established positive relationship, it's likely that other engagement efforts are going to be unsuccessful. And so through the past several years of working with RTS2B teams specifically around family and community engagement, this point has become incredibly clear. If we try to start too early with that developmental piece or trying to throw information at them or anything like that, and we don't have that strong positive relationship, all of that stuff is just not going to be as successful as it could have been if we had started with the relationship piece. So that's why we're really going to focus on that today. And then I have a citation here at the bottom. If you're a research nerd like me and some of the people on our team, you might want to look at this article. But this article talks about how they looked at both parents and teachers' perceptions of their relationships with one another. And when they both perceived that relationship to be positive, teachers tended to rate students higher in social skills and lower in behavior problems. So that positive relationship, and moreover, their perception of that positive relationship was really, really critical. So what is a positive relationship? So I'm going to take a minute here to take a breath and hear from you guys. So in the chat box, type a few words that you would use to describe aspects of a positive relationship. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean with families or as an educator, just any positive relationship that you have in your life. What are some words that you would use to describe that? Wow, you guys are awesome. You're so engaged. This chat, I haven't been paying attention to the chat as I've been talking, but it's just been rolling. So trust, friendship, communication. Yes, those are all really, really important. Respect, compassion. I love that. Honesty. Non-judgmental. I really like that one. Supportive. These are really great. Okay, I love to see that a lot of these are right in line with my points that I'm going to talk about. So that is really great. All right. So I just want to point out, this might seem obvious, but these same things are still true during COVID-19. And I just want everybody to hear that and kind of let that sink in for a minute, because I know that we're getting so overwhelmed with all these things that we have to do differently now. But the aspects of positive relationships are still the same. And we don't have to completely rethink how to form a relationship with somebody. We just have to rethink the way that we need to do it. So just kind of let yourself rest in that fact that we just have to kind of shift our methods. We don't necessarily have to learn how to become whole new people. So this is a resource that we have available for you guys. It is a beginning of the year questionnaire for families. And so many of you probably already have something like this in your classroom schools, where teachers send a questionnaire home for families to fill out. So this is not to replace that, but we just have some suggested questions that you can add to that. And if you're not already doing that, you can use this form as is, or you can just take a few questions. But we really think these are most important for RTS Grade B specifically, and we have some specific questions around COVID-19 to consider. But when you're doing this, be sure to include a question about family or student strengths, because remember, we talked about how important that strengths focus is. And we want you to introduce families to who you are as a person, not just who you are as a teacher, and let them know that you want to know them in that way too. So while we realize our introductions today were a little unorthodox for this format, our goal was to model what it could be like, what it could look like to introduce yourself as a person, and not only as a professional. So including some things that you love to do, some hobbies, some things that you've been learning can be a great way to do that. So like I said, we are going to have to rethink some of our ways of building relationships, right? So we have all these traditions that our schools have been doing for years and years that have become really integral parts of our school communities. And we don't want you to throw away those school events. Don't get rid of them. Just modify them in a way that can be safe for our current environment. So thinking about doing things virtually and socially distanced, which I know everybody is already so aware of, but we just wanted to share some ideas for how to do that. So having a virtual meet and greet. So if you're a classroom teacher and you're feeling really overwhelmed by the idea of having to meet with each family individually virtually, you can have small groups and have little time slots where they can sign up. And that's great because they're not only getting to know you, but you're building a sense of camaraderie and community within your classroom environment. Considering having a virtual open house, making a video classroom environment for families to see, and then having video introductions of your faculty and staff. And also try to plan, if you're going to be virtual all semester. I know we have, across the state, we have schools all over the board. We have some schools that are going back fully virtual, and some that are going back half and half, and some that are just going back with social distancing measures and safety measures in place. So if you're going back full virtual, try to remember to plan some regular check-ins throughout the semester so that you can keep building that relationship. And so I just wanted to share a few examples that we have here that we've already seen people across our region doing. So Stegall Primary, they're in Humboldt, Tennessee. They had a virtual Spirit Week on their Facebook page in the spring, which was really fun to see and to watch. And then of course, Shelby County Schools had a virtual block party, if you didn't hear about that. And they hosted a block party with a local radio station, and a local rapper. And they had giveaways and prizes so that it was incentivizing to families to come to that, because it was going to be a fun thing, but it was also informational. It also provided information for them. And then finally, I have this video I want to show you. from Bearden Middle School, and just bear with me as I change over to that.
Hello, future Bruins. My name is Mike Toth, and I am the principal of Bearden Middle School, and we are very excited to meet you. I'm sorry we didn't get to host you guys after spring break, as we were all in quarantine at that point, to show you all the great things that we've got going on at Bearden Middle School and what you can be a part of. But we've put together this video so you can have an idea of what you're going to get to do, to meet your teachers, to see some of the clubs and activities we've got going on. I also want to mention, I do need to brush up on my iMovie skills. Mrs. Edsel, who is the 6th grade principal, put together a pretty slick video. And the guy with the pie on the face is me. And hopefully you will get to do that along with many other fun things and activities next year. So again, we do look forward to meeting you, and I hope you have a wonderful summer. Thank you.
Okay. So as you can see, that video is pretty long. It's 19 minutes. So I just want to do the first minute of that, and hopefully you are seeing my screen again. Is that everybody seeing the slides now? Okay, good. So I just wanted to share with you that example. That's from a school in Knoxville or Knox County. That it's a great example of how to just do a video to welcome your kids back and to show some procedures that they need to start thinking about and learning about for the next school year. So some more ideas about building relationships at a distance. So take advantage of things like social media outlets to build a positive climate. So East Elementary School, you see on the right, they are a great follow, and we have them on our session website. They've been doing this long before COVID happened, but they do staff and faculty and student shout outs on their Facebook page. So they'll just pick one. I think they were doing one a week or something like that. And it's been really great for really providing some familiarity. That's a hard word to say, but getting more familiar with their school community through that. And then on the left, we have DPS, Dyersburg Primary, this cute little photo that they shared. These were really popular in the spring, but I think it could be a great time to start bringing them back and start showing your faces again to families and showing that you're getting excited about getting to see them again on a daily basis, whether virtually or face-to-face. And then at the bottom, we just have a picture of a postcard from a school in East Tennessee. And I wanted to include this because I want you to remember to refer back to your questionnaire responses for preferred methods of contact. And so if most of your families don't indicate social media as a preferred method of contact, then you're probably not going to want to use social media, and instead use something like mailers or postcards and things like that to stay in touch and to build that positive climate. All right, so here are some keys to positive relationships that we wanted to focus on today. And so these come from a variety of research on family school partnerships. And after reviewing all of that different research, I found these keys that are really most important to establishing and maintaining positive relationships with families. So the first one is strengths focus, which we've already talked about a ton, so I won't talk any more about that. And also that proactive two-way communication that Miller's going to get into in a second. So I'm not going to steal her thunder on that one. But I just wanted to say with that, being sure to actively listen and listening to comprehend rather listening to respond. Next, we have mutual trust and respect, which was something a lot of people mentioned in the chat box. So you guys already see that that is really important to positive relationships. And building trust can be really overwhelming, right? That's something that's really built. But some tips for building trust would be just being honest and open and consistent, and showing your respect for families by listening to them and valuing them and elevating their voices. Next, we have mindful awareness. So being aware of your biases, your assumptions, your beliefs, and your worldview, because those things, they show through more than we think. And I'm really just like scraping the edge of the surface of cultural responsiveness. So if that's something that you haven't learned a whole lot about, I would really recommend digging into that. But just thinking about the culture that your families are coming from, and then the culture that you're coming from, and how those two things might be a little different, and how they might shape the way that you communicate with and interact with each other. And then shared responsibility, again, that means we're not placing blame on one another and we're sharing responsibility for student progress. And try asking families if they have ideas about how they can contribute, and then give your ideas and suggestions. Collaborative problem solving, we've talked a little bit about that already, but if you're having a problem with a student, maybe saying things like, Taylor hasn't been completing assignments. What do you think might be going on? What can we do together to help get him back on track? Instead of just saying, Taylor isn't doing his assignments, I need you to get him to do X, Y, and Z, if that makes sense. And then finally, having a welcoming environment. So this is something we might have to think about a little differently this year, but if you had a school where you had families that would come in and sit in instruction, think about how you can shift that now. If you're in person but limiting visitations, how can you still have a welcoming environment? Or if you're virtual, is it possible to invite families to sit in on instruction at certain times? So I believe I've exhausted all of my talking time. So we're going to transition into our first breakout session, and our amazing behind the scenes Zoom guru, Jessica Eschball, has been working really hard to assign you all to breakout groups. So thanks so much for that, Jess. You should receive a notification that says you've been added to the breakout room. So you're just going to click join breakout room. And when you get over there, just take a moment to introduce yourself to the group, and we'll be sending discussion questions for you to talk about, and you'll have about 5 minutes for each question. So have fun. Know if you have any issues.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Once we get everybody back in here from the breakout rooms, we'll get going with this next section, okay? I always liken this to, you remember in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when Mike TV was like little pieces, you know, above everybody else? It's kind of how I envision breakout rooms happen, you know? We travel in little pieces back and forth to our groups. And that might actually be what's happening. I'm not really sure scientifically, you know, what this all is. But we hope that went well. You know, I'm excited to hopefully connect you guys with some folks in some different areas of the state and kind of see, you know, what people are thinking. Obviously, we're not sure what's going to happen right now. Most of us, I think, are kind of in limbo. So we definitely hope that it was nice to kind of talk through some of those things with other folks and, you know, stay positive and learn some things. So yeah, y'all can see my PowerPoint okay? Are we good? See the slide? All right, great. Thank you for those of you. So the part we're going to talk about next is communication. So we need to emphasize two-way communication. And that's difficult, right? I mean, it's difficult even in a good year, and it's going to be even more difficult now. So how can we stay positive and emphasize two-way communication right now? So we've got one-way communication. So when we think about one-way, it's going to be linear, it's going to be authoritative, and it's going to be limited. So we need to make sure that we're looking at it from a two-way perspective, which is interactive, equal, and feedback-oriented. Sometimes that's difficult, right? Sometimes maybe I don't want feedback from people. Sometimes it puts yourself out there, right? If I'm like, oh, I'd love to know how this is going. Even like just now, and I'm like, okay, can you hear me? Can you see my slide? Sometimes I'm worried if somebody's shaking their head no, because I'm not sure what that next step would be. And then it would be a hustle to kind of figure it out. But we need to make sure we're making sure our families are getting two-way communication with us and with our school. I know earlier when we all introduced ourselves, I kind of forgot to say, so I come at this as I was a 13-year teacher in the classroom, but now working on this project, I'm also the PTSO vice president. And so I kind of have some different perspectives on this, and hopefully I can share those with you. Just in looking at like what family engagement looks like from when I was a teacher, but also now that I'm a little more involved. And sometimes I have to step back and kind of, you know, help people see from both sides. So tips here, we want to discuss contact methods with each family at the beginning of the school year. And I know that Shelby talked about this earlier, and it's on that questionnaire she developed. So maybe ask families what the best way for you to communicate with them is. You know, if you've got a lot of families that aren't on Facebook, you know, a Facebook school page may not be the best way to push information out. I know at the high school and middle school levels, maybe Twitter is nice because a lot of those older students might be on there. It also depends on which preferences and who you're trying to push your information out to specifically, okay? And so that might be something to think about as well. Again, you know, there's that postcard, that green magnet put out here in Knoxville. I really liked it because it had faces, it was very positive. They sent it out and they included back to school dates on the back, right? I like mail, my kids like mail. I don't want us to discount that that might be a good way to talk to people. However, for some families, that might not be great. So we need to make sure we're kind of asking and seeing what people do prefer. I know with us, we try to make sure we're hitting everybody as much as we can, whether that's a phone call, an automated call, or the Facebook message, as well as an email. And I know sometimes that it can feel like a broken record, right? But I would much rather us be a broken record versus not hitting anybody at all. The thing I would like to talk about though on that last slide is make sure if you can align those communication things within your school. I know I, as a parent, had one teacher doing one app in kindergarten and another teacher doing a couple more apps in 3rd grade. So then it was kind of difficult for me because I was always checking different apps to get information. So if there isn't a way that you can align that within your school, I do think that's helpful. And that's from somebody that I feel like I'm somewhat on top of things, not all the time, but most of the time, right? But it can be difficult to do that. So another tip is parent-teacher conferences and family conferences is a goal-making discussion rather than an assessment or a lecture. Same personal story last year. I was a teacher. I try to go into these things, you know, I always want to support teachers, but it's so hard when the first thing out of our mouths is something negative, right? And so I get that like mama bear kind of thing, and I'm like, oh gosh, what's going wrong, you know? And then obviously I also take it as a, you know, like, what does that look like in my parenting, right? So I think we have to sit down and have these conversations and talk about how we can be proactive and supportive together. And I think we're gonna have to work on this a lot more if we are virtual this year and kind of what that can look like. How can I reach parents and have these things and have these conversations, you know, if I can't see them in person? How are we gonna do that? What's that gonna look like? And especially if, say, I'm a parent at home helping my child with virtual learning, I'm probably gonna need some more help than normal, okay? Or at least some more communication, especially as we get these things started. So I just pulled this sheet as an example, but I know I came home this year from family conferences. You know, it had my daughter's scores, what she could improve upon, and what the teacher recommended. And it was nice. It was like, I recommend this math app for at least this many minutes a day because she's not doing great on her fluency. I love feedback like that because then I know what I should be working on, okay? Versus just, you know, they need to work for 30 minutes. Well, what? Tell me specifically what. I got a lot of things in my mind, and I do really appreciate details like that. Again, document communication efforts and keep track of what works for each family. I think that'll be helpful too. You know, not only, I don't know about y'all, I'm forgetting stuff left and right now. So if I write down maybe communication preferences for each family, it's gonna help me if I go back and I'm like, hey, I haven't heard from that parent in a while. Oh, they told me that they've turned off social media, you know, for a little bit, so maybe I should try calling, you know. So think about different things like that. There are definitely challenges in implementing two-way communication. So you want to make sure that all communications, whether they're printed or non-printed, are easy to read, clear, and frequent. And when I say that, you know, we want to make sure that it's not, like sometimes I get things from the school and it's a lot of words on one page. Again, I feel like I do a pretty good job of paying attention and focusing, but when I see a lot of words, I tend to zone out. If I was not a great reader, I would probably also not be able to get through that document. So sometimes we need to remember some of those strategies that we use for some of our students that need help and accommodations in reading, probably when we develop things for families as well. Put some space on the page, make sure it's readable, okay? Make sure it's something that if I struggle with reading, I could comprehend. Same with taking into consideration maybe parents who are parents of our ESL population, you know, put it into formats that can translate it easily, or work with the ESL teacher in your school so that you're getting communication to them ahead of time enough that you could have it translated for the families, especially if it's important stuff right now. And then create high quality communications. So you want to make it pretty, you know, something that if I see in a folder in a mix of papers, I'm going to go, oh, this is probably pretty important, right? I might be drawn to it. So we'll talk about some different examples of that. But when we talk about two-way communication, I want to highlight this room right here. So this is a room that one of the schools actually that's dialed in today, Fort Loudon Middle School. Good job, guys. They, along with their student leadership team, felt like they were missing out on two-way communication with parents. The principal there felt like when families had to come in and they were escalated, if they came into his office and saw him behind a desk, that the communication was not going to be two-way at all. And also they had a population where when parents would come in to meet with the principal or with the teacher, younger siblings also were coming with them. And so the conversation that they needed to have just wasn't happening. And so they actually took over, I believe it was the janitor's closet up next to the office, and they redecorated it for this purpose. So as you can see, there's toys for those younger siblings, there's a couch and a table, and they also have a refrigerator with snacks and things. So that way, if I'm a parent and I'm escalated, or maybe I just have a question, but I'm a little intimidated by the principal, the secretary now sends in every family to this room instead of waiting in the office. So the principal says if that mom's sitting on the couch when he walks in there, he sits on the other side of the couch and talks to her. If she's at the table, he'll sit at the table and talk to her. But it really just kind of makes everybody feel welcome, and it takes down that tension and makes me feel happy to be there, okay? So I really love that example that two-way communication isn't just written, all right? So best practices. We wanna make sure we're providing detailed information on school policies and programs. Again, translate it. I do like a regular schedule, okay? So if I know the principal sends out something every Sunday night, and usually it's followed up on Monday by those team teachers, right? There was a middle school here in Knox County that when everybody went virtually online, they sent out a Google sheet of office hours for each teacher by grade band. So it was clearly communicated, maybe if I had multiple kids in that school, when teachers were gonna be available and the best way to contact them. Again, I like something set up like that. It's very clear to me. The other thing I wanna stress here is clear communication on choosing extracurriculars within schools. We've had a lot of feedback from parents about, I don't know when my kid qualifies for choir or qualifies for cross country. Things like that are hot topics amongst parents. If we can clearly communicate that at the beginning of the year, it really will cut down on a lot of those conversations and questions, especially if there's criteria for belonging to those things, like you have, like safety patrol, right? You have to have a certain grade, grade average. You have to have certain attendance. So make sure we're communicating those things ahead of time. And if we're looking at students that are in home versus virtual, can we all participate, and what are the criteria still? Let's not forget about everybody needing to have that information. Obviously we would want people to meet face-to-face with each family at the beginning of the year. That might not be a possibility right now, but let's think about how we can get folks on video. Parents will respond, and students too, better to seeing my face and seeing me talking sometimes versus a very long email. I'm not saying one shouldn't happen versus the other, but it would be nice to see those two things partnered together. If we've got telephone calls happening, that'd be great if we can get those numbers. Definitely like those weekly folders and conferences too, whatever those may look like for your school. So just some ways to move from one-way to two-way communication. So maybe have a newsletter, where families can write comments or give you feedback on different things that you're sending out. If you send out an email pretty frequently, look at some blogs instead of just a one-way email and see if people can then comment or share or add thoughts. And then I think we already talked about conferences pretty well, sharing specific academic data, but also letting me as a parent know how I can help, with some details. Scheduling of events, let's make sure that we get folks involved in that. See if parents thought those events last year, if they could be updated, or maybe if we think about times. I know that's one of the things that I always kind of try to stress as a PTSO member, is not to have things just go from 3 to 5, maybe to have things go a little later as well for those parents that or families that might work a little later, and just see, because, sometimes with work, it's really hard. It's not that we don't want to be engaged. Again, science night, instead of just displaying things, maybe having an interactive, and then also coffee with the principal or things like that, maybe getting feedback from parents after the first one, and then the principal can address those, details the next time around. So we do have a sheet, and it's on that website, using technology to promote family engagement. So please feel free to look at that. It's got lots of different examples that we have. That top left image, that's from something called S'more. So I would like that maybe a little better than a MailChimp, only because I'm familiar with MailChimp, but the graphics, you have to put them in yourself. S'more has great graphics already, kind of, I think, classroom based. And so you can create like a newsletter and you can put in your YouTube videos or maybe videos from Canvas. I could see where it could be super interactive for families this fall. On the right, obviously that's just a screenshot from my child's class dojo. You know, you can do messages or stories and parents can write back. I do like that. It is a nice communication tool for those of you that have it. And then on the bottom, that's from Remind. You know, I think Remind has done some really nice updates in the last couple of years since I was in the classroom. Now you can use Remind for two-way communication. And don't forget, when you use Remind, it does block your number. But I do like it because as a parent, as a teacher, I know that we get home or we're at home doing stuff at night. So the thing I like about Remind is I can pick up my phone and do that kind of as a multitasking if I need to send messages out to families, but it doesn't track my number. But I do like now that parents can communicate back to you as the teacher and ask questions there. Just some examples of two-way communication on Facebook during COVID that I really like is Hamilton County Schools have been doing a ton of open, I think, you know, Facebook Live things. So they do a whole child Wednesday session where they've got their SEL coaches and school counselors are live on Facebook talking about different ideas and, you know, strategies for families and strategies for teachers. So at the bottom there, they had one of their counselors talking about what filling buckets could look like at home. And then because it's Facebook Live, those counselors can interact. They have somebody who can answer questions from parents while they're talking. Their superintendent also got on there one day and was talking about teacher self-care in May when he really could feel that teachers were stressing out with everything. And so I really like that they've opened it up and they open themselves up for questions. But it's great because people know it's coming. They're doing one this week and they did one last week on exceptional education because we know those parents have a lot of questions right now and a lot of anxiety. So if we can open up and do Facebook Lives with that and kind of interact with them, that will help everybody feel a little bit better and a little bit more supported. So I think they're doing a really nice job with that. And I'm sure a lot of you all are as well. Just an example of how we can do that. I know some PTSOs here in Knoxville have a Facebook page, but then they don't have commenting turned on. And so I would not recommend that. I would allow folks to interact with you instead of just making a post. Even if you have to turn the moderation on to kind of see what's posted or not posted, I do kind of want to, you know, we shouldn't always turn commenting off. We need to make sure that we can kind of talk through that. So that's the end of my portion. Sorry, I'm sure I talked quickly, but if you have any questions at all, let us know. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and let Melissa share her screen so she can go through the next part of it.
Okay, so the last point that we're going to make today in thinking through everything is that culture of collaboration. So creating that kind of culture of collaboration and establishing that, building on the culture you already had at your school building, but kind of taking that into whatever format learning looks like in your school building. So I don't know about you guys, but I've had this song stuck in my head since March began with everything, that every time I hear "We're Together," I think about High School Musical. So it's cheesy. Tips for families. I know them about being on both sides of that with my child right there. Anyway, so thinking about how we can work together, provide resources and support, get their feedback, all of those things to be the culture of collaboration together. So we're going to talk about tips that already are created that you can share with them and how to kind of share the things that are special about your school, how parents can kind of help join that to extend that learning environment at home, whether it's because of virtual learning or to just build on what you're working on with the students in person. So the first one for extending into at-home learning, empowering families to be collaborative partners. Virtual learning really snuck up on us in the spring. So taking those lessons learned about how that went, things to be improved. I felt, you know, with my boys scrambling a little bit, trying to set up the Zooms and make sure I was meeting their needs while trying to figure out how to meet my work needs. And, you know, it was really hard. So now that, you know, if your school's meeting in person or has a hybrid model, whatever it is, making sure that parents are equipped to have the information they need to support learning at home. So that includes if there are any things, like we had a science experiment that we did on Zoom, and our teacher luckily gave us enough time for me to put the things on the grocery list so that my son could participate in the Zoom time, science experiment. But those things with advance notice and clear instructions are so important. And I think acknowledging that facilitating virtual learning is hard. Just a little pat on the back for parents of thank you for setting this up. Thank you for making sure your student could participate in the lesson today. Thank you for being part of this. Nothing dramatic, but it just feels really good as a parent to be acknowledged. Like it's a lot. We're all burning the candle at both ends. We're rearranging schedules and trying to meet everybody's needs. So just a simple thank you for participating, or thank you for getting your student today with our new routines. Thank you for following those new routines and procedures with the temperature check, having them have their mask if that's something that your district is doing. Whatever it is that's new for parents that they're having to be a part of to help get their students in the learning environment and successful at school, just saying thank you, because it's a lot and we're all a little emotionally high strung. So just building off of what Miller already shared with you about that regular communication. Again, there are some days that my email just feel flooded and a little overwhelmed when we were doing virtual learning in the spring. So when my boys' schools established, like Miller was saying, those clear expected communication procedures about, I knew I'd get the lesson plans on Friday and I'd get the Zoom links on Monday and the director would email us on Wednesday. Those types of things were really, really helpful. And then sharing regular information about the student's progress, especially if you're meeting in person and then maybe down the road that student will need to engage in virtual learning or the school will need to engage in virtual learning, keeping those parents up to date on the student progress. So if their role increases as someone who's providing a lot of academic support and encouragement, that they already kind of understand where their student stands. So encourage families to motivate and monitor their students' learning, provide information, especially if students are, having trouble coming back, re-entering the learning environment, or struggling academically.
So we definitely want to make sure that we are ensuring teachers respectfully and effectively communicate with families. And I think that's key, is making sure that that is happening, and then using surveys throughout the year. Because I know as a working parent, sometimes what might work for me at the beginning of the year for communication might need to be changed, especially, as I think work will shift from home and back and forth, as well as maybe who's watching my kids throughout the year and maybe facilitating instruction. So it might be good to check in every now and then and see what that looks like.
So that team-based approach, connecting with families regularly to promote that partnership, and like the theme has been today of always leading with the student's strengths. I feel like, parents need a lot, myself included, a lot of reassurance that we made the right choice if there was choice to be made. We need a lot of reassurance that our students are happy and safe and enjoy something about school, whether it's in person or virtual. I feel like I've kind of lost my confidence a little bit that, my boys are happy and safe and enjoying school, and it's better there than here at the house. So just keeping that in mind, I think, when interacting with your parents, even if there are students having a hard time or having trouble getting back into the swing of it, or need extra support with their academics or problem behavior, those little moments of reassurance, talking about what the students are doing well or what they're enjoying, whether virtually or in person within the school environment, I think are really important right now and go a long way with building on that school community. Again, using that common language so everyone's on the same page about what we're working on to help all students, or then any students who need additional supports and interventions as well. Building that trust is so huge right now, especially, we've all been kind of having a strange year since March. We've all been together. So releasing that, parents are, sending their students to school, or trusting that the school's meeting with them virtually, meeting their needs. So building trust that, we're still working together, because parents need a little bit of practice right now. Families need practice separating from their students to go back to school and feel like it's the right thing. So those high ratios of say-do correspondence, meaning as a school, I know that for me as a counselor, that was a huge thing. Like if I say I'm going to do it to support your student, that follow through, which went a long way. So making sure that you have that follow through when you're working with families, and then open to feedback and suggestions, of course, as they connect regularly. So as we're going into the beginning of the school year, the things that I think are really important to remember are strive to do whatever you can to make school familiar, predictable, and structured to our students and our families so that they know what to expect. So like the video Shelby mentioned, we have 2 great examples on that on our website that's shared with you with all the resources from training today about those new routines and procedures. You know, if you're meeting in person, where you walk in to get the temperature check, what happens if you have a high temperature, new drop-off procedures, new visitor or parent or family people entering or not being able to enter the building. All of those new policies and procedures, having a video or presentations with that spelled out really can help make things seem familiar and predictable when our families and our students go back to school or engage in the virtual learning environment of what they're going to expect to see. And then even if teachers are wearing masks, pictures of teachers in masks, pictures of any changes in how students walk around the hallway, or if there are areas they have to stay in or not stay in. Again, what you can make things be predictable and familiar when they begin the school year is critical as we're returning to school with a lot of new routines and procedures. And then again, building off of that familiar, predictable, and structured lines of communication so that our families know when to expect to hear from us, so that I know for me, you know, my heart didn't race when I saw the directors emailing me. But knowing that, okay, it's Wednesday, so I'm getting that communication, and then kind of structured and predictable ways that parents can give you input or ask you questions or things that they know that they can do if they have a question, what the process is to access you with those questions. And then as far as building on predictable, structured, and familiar ways for them to share concerns. Those initial surveys are awesome, but think about other ways throughout the year to still know if they need help with support or accessing things electronically, or if they have questions about their students' progress or how their students' well-being at school, setting up phone calls or virtual meetings, having maybe some sort of template form that they could send you or a survey that they could access at any point throughout the year that they know, okay, I'm having a concern, I'm not being a bother to this teacher, this administrator, this counselor, like I really just feel like it's time that I need a little bit more. So having them know what those portals and those channels are to access you, or maybe establishing some sort of virtual office hours for students if they need extra help with their academics, or you know, as counselors, extra check-ins or things where they can easily access adults in the buildings at times that we can just, you know, be on our virtual platforms and wait for them, or that families can know that they can access you. So it could be just short little windows, but again, creating another predictable way that they can reach out to you for help if you need it, or if they need it. Again, building on that school community and being creative with some of our restrictions, you know, the traditions should still continue. So thinking about what are those special moments about those traditions and those abilities for us to all gather together. What are those big takeaways? I know at our like back to school nights and transition nights, nothing would make a student's face light up more than knowing a teacher taught their older sibling. Like it was like magical. Like, wait, you knew my brother? So is there a way to have a guess my sibling trivia or something to bring those moments to light, even if we're not all gathering together, walking around the hall, noticing these things about each other and our families, as you're trying to get to know the students as individuals, having them taking turns sharing about their families and siblings, or people in the community that they're close with. Oh, my neighbor knows you. You know, just those little connections that were pretty teed up pretty easily for us when we could gather in big groups and walk around the hall and see everybody together, but being really intentional about still providing those opportunities when we have to have some distance or smaller groups gathering. And then people like me, the counselor, don't forget about including them, having them have some sort of virtual shout out or explaining who they are. Some of those other people in the building who aren't, you know, classroom teachers, we don't want them to be forgotten about, again, without some sort of big group gathering, or if there's things are only happening virtually, making sure that their maybe picture is still shared, or an explanation of who they are is still happens, so that if down the road families need to work with a special education teacher or the social worker or the counselor or whoever it is, they've already been introduced to them in some sort of a platform, again, where they would have just seen them when they walked in the door at family night. Think about how else they can be exposed to them. Or maybe non-classroom teachers dropping in during a Zoom lesson, or having an administrator drop in and say hey to the students during a Zoom lesson. Again, those things that are so easy to do when we're all together in groups physically, how can we still build on that and have those nice opportunities? So a resource that we have is a family engagement passport, where it has examples of activities families can do to, be part of the school community, strengthen their relationships together, strengthen the mission of the school. There's just kind of different silly little categories and different silly little things that they can do. So we adapted this for this year to have some virtual opportunities too. So that's posted on that Google site. If that's something that you'd be interested in sharing with your families, and maybe they can turn it in or email it or submit it once they complete the activities. For this example of the school that we used, were inspired from with this, had them turn it in for a coupon for a free pizza. So a way to build in your community partners if there's some sort of acknowledgement for checking the boxes. But check out that resource. Other things to keep in mind is any school-wide initiatives that you're implementing together. Give families the tools to continue that language, continue that dialogue at home about what those initiatives are. So things like the home matrix, all the different skills that you're working on, we want those to generalize. We want families to be equipped to talk about the expectations or character education, what the focus is. So just think about sending those resources home. We have awesome tip sheets on our website about things that you can send home to families. So look at those and utilize them. About home expectations specifically are awesome. This is an example of a survey about getting input on school-wide expectations. It's something that you can send to have students and families fill out, just to make sure that they reflect the same values and the missions of our families. And it's important to get their input so that everyone feels on the same page, that these expectations, reflect the goals of everyone and all the behaviors that we want to be engaged in. This activity is in the PBIS Cultural Responsiveness Field Guide. It's a personal matrix activity, and it's something to consider, especially as school students are coming back to school. We need to remind them of the procedures, or remind them of the expectations, reteach them, because we're all out of practice. So in this activity, it explains how students can as together with their teacher, the teacher explains what those school-wide expectations mean at school, just in general for this purpose of this activity. And then the students fill in what those expectations mean at home and in their neighborhood. So it's a great opportunity to reflect on, those are the settings that they've been in for so many months. How are those the same as school? How are they different? It could lend itself to some opportunities to really talk about code switching and why we need to engage in these particular expectations at school, and how it's helpful to kind of meet their needs to be successful. And then it can also really highlight to the teachers where they need to kind of reteach and focus and discuss in more detail the engaging in those expectations. And then this is an additional activity that takes it one step further about those classroom routines, which is great. Again, having the teacher kind of talking through, in this example, independent seat work, what that looks like at school, what that routine and procedure looks like, and then the students can think through what that looks like at home and in their neighborhood. This is especially important, obviously, if virtual learning is happening, what that should be, what the expectations mean virtually, but also if you're starting off in person and then a student or groups of students or all students need to end up switching to a virtual learning model, there's already been a conversation about what these expectations and routines look like at home. So these are more tip sheets for you to enjoy and share or tweak, whatever you need. And then thinking about continuing those community partnerships, getting resources to parents, especially in those multiple ways to communicate and different ways to deliver this information to them, any strategies about self-care, just different things that especially our families in the community that maybe kind of underserved or aren't getting access to the resources, or maybe they don't know they're available, or the schedules of getting things, or just making sure everyone is in touch with each other through the school community. And then thinking about how to connect those students to the school community. So it's just some ideas about how we can think about the students giving back, or creating cards, or public health recommendations with fun signs, or you know, different things. And then our students are likely going to be sorting through some feelings of maybe loss of control, or anxiety, or stress, or worry. So what activities can we do to help them with that? So feelings of gratitude, rose and thorn, thinking through what's the same and what's different about school, any sort of prompts, which can be done virtually or in person. But you know, we're all thinking about just wanting to give each other a hug. So how can we do that emotionally when we might not be able to do that physically? So we're going to go into our next breakout room. It'll be the same ones that you were in before, and then we'll come back to go over these last couple of resources and wrap up for the end of the day. So Jessica, you can send everyone to their groups, or if you need to linger and ask questions, don't hesitate to do that. Awesome. Well, welcome back, everybody. I know that it feels so good to talk with people who are in the same world as you, who are going through the same kind of questions and considerations. So I hope that you really were able to make some connections. If you came with a team of people on your team, if you came and met new people in the breakout rooms, you were able to share information and stay in touch, because, you know, we do need to rely on each other so much right now. And it just helps to feel, you know, we want to build that community with our schools, but also, you know, we're all educators. We all have the same goals to help improve everything about returning to school for students and families. So I hope that you were able to kind of make those connections and talk through some of those things that I know are continued conversations, and probably on your action plans, things to revisit with your schools. So resources that this website at the very bottom is what the Miller sent in the emails and what was shared in the chat today, but do go over to it, and it has all of our resources from our session today. And then our website is within that, to be able to click elsewhere. We have resources for families and resources for educators in general, and we're constantly updating those to provide resources to you. Those tip sheets I quickly mentioned are all saved on that website, so please do take advantage of all those resources that are out there. We didn't get to talk about the advanced tiers today. That wasn't our goal, but I want to give a quick shout out to these resources about supporting students who may be participating in additional interventions at home. These were some of the wonderful resources put out by the Center on PBIS, that National Technical Assistance Center. They have fantastic things, so do you know, look at those. We referenced all of these throughout today, but I wanted to give them a clear shout out. Follow us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter. We love connecting everyone to each other through social media platforms, highlighting schools and districts that are doing a great job, highlighting our favorite resources, just constantly being able to feel connected to all of you and to put you in touch with each other. So if you're not already following us, please do. You can follow all 3 regions or just your one region based on where your school is located. But you know, we're really proud of all the resources and things we're able to do through social media.
So thanks to everybody for joining us. Make sure to check out that website where the slides and all the other information are. And that COVID website we update pretty frequently. So, you know, as we get more resources, please keep checking back and we'll post them there. But thank you so much for attending today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.